How's it going, folks? I'm Des with DesFit, and this is the brand new Venu SQ2 from Garmin, which updates the original and quite popular Venu SQ with a new larger and brighter display, as well as even better health and fitness tracking. So the Venu SQ2 is part of Garmin's smartwatch-focused lineup of watches where the Venu series sports bright and vibrant displays. They can track plenty of your health metrics, and they also have plenty of different sports and fitness features. But maybe more importantly is that the Venu series line of watches also get pretty great battery life. So in today's video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about the new Venu SQ2, including what it can do as a smartwatch, the health and activity tracking features, as well as how accurate it is in tracking fitness and sports like running, cycling, as well as weight training. And if the information in this video does help you out at all, don't be shy about hitting that like button down below. It's a small little thing that you can do that'll help this video and the channel quite a bit, and I appreciate it. So with the Venu SQ2, they've kept the same design as the original, but arguably the biggest change is that they've updated the display, where this new display is about 17% larger than the original, but not only that, it's now an AMOLED display versus the LCD display found before. The LCD display on the original Venu was good, but the AMOLED display takes it up a notch, and it's the same type of display that's found on their higher-end Venu 2 and Venu 2 Plus, where it's super bright, incredibly vibrant, and it's pretty great to look at, and that's whether you're inside or you're outside. And the Venu SQ2 also does have an optional always-on display mode where it dims the display just slightly when it's not active. And you'll get around the device using a combination of two physical buttons along with a touchscreen. And the touchscreen responsiveness is pretty good, where it's predictable in most situations. When your hands are wet, the display can act a little bit funky from time to time, but that's something that can be expected from most touchscreens. Now, AMOLED displays are awesome to look at, but one disadvantage to these types of displays is that they tend to consume a lot of battery life. But Garmin's been able to work some magic with their Venu series line of watches where they all get pretty decent battery life. So the Venu SQ2, this can get up to 11 days of battery life using it as a smartwatch, which is up from the 6 days on the original Venu SQ. Now, battery life can vary quite a bit though, depending on how many outdoor activities that you track, as well as whether or not you enable the always-on display mode. But for my testing over the last few weeks, I was basically roughly getting about 8 days out of it, and that was without using the always-on display mode and tracking about a 1 hour long outdoor activity per day. If I were to enable the always-on display mode, I was getting more like 2 to 3 days out of it. So the always-on display, it's awesome to look at, but it does consume quite a bit more battery life, so just keep that in mind. And then on the smartwatch side of things, you'll be able to receive notifications like texts, emails, social app notifications, and all that good stuff. With texts, if you're on an iPhone, you'll be able to receive the text, but you won't be able to reply, unfortunately, but that has to do with Apple not allowing text replies on anything other than an Apple Watch. However, if you're on an Android phone, you will be able to reply with quick responses that you can also edit in the Garmin Connect smartphone app. They've also improved the vibration alert, where the Venu SQ2 now has stronger vibrations, but along with that, they've also made the vibrations quieter. And then beyond that, you can also view weather information and then see upcoming events in your calendar. Now, there's actually two different versions of the Venu SQ2. There's going to be a music version and then a non-music version. The music version runs $299, and then the non-music version runs $249. And with the music version of the Venu SQ2, you'll be able to download and store up to 500 tracks from popular music services like Spotify, Amazon Music, as well as Deezer for offline listening without you needing to have your phone with you. But even if you have the non-music version of the Venu SQ2, you still can control the music that's playing on your phone when it's paired. And then with both the music and non-music versions of the Venu SQ2, they also come with Garmin Pay for contactless payments. And then on the health and activity tracking side of things, the Venu SQ2 can track your steps, it can track your calories, as well as something called intensity minutes. And you can think of intensity minutes as the time spent doing vigorous activity. It can also track your heart rate 24 hours a day. It also has an SpO2 sensor for tracking your blood oxygen saturation levels. It can track your stress levels, respiration rate. You can also track your hydration levels throughout the day. And it also has a feature called body battery. And you can think of body battery as basically your energy levels throughout the day and how well you recharge during sleep. And the Venu SQ2 also does have Garmin sleep tracking that gives you a sleep score along with the time that you spent in bed, along with a breakout of your sleep stages like REM, deep sleep, light sleep, as well as time awake. The Venu SQ2 also comes with Garmin's new health snapshot feature. So what this feature does is it collects a lot of different health data points all at one time. So it collects your heart rate variability, blood oxygen saturation level, respiration rate, and stress. So it's basically an easier way of getting a more well-rounded picture of your health rather than each of those metrics separately. And then on the safety and tracking side of things, the Venu SQ2 also comes with an assistance feature where you'll be able to send a message to an emergency contact with your location. So this could be especially useful in a situation where you feel that you're uncomfortable or possibly in danger, where you can kind of subtly let one of your emergency contacts know of your location. And it also has a feature called instant detection for a few select outdoor activity profiles. And what this does is that it tries to detect if you're in something like an accident where you're moving along and then suddenly come to a stop. And it's not just like stopping at a stoplight or something. It's more when it detects like a sudden impact and you stop moving. So at that point, it'll try to send an alert to your emergency contact with your location that an incident may have occurred. And the Venu SQ2 also has a feature called Live Track, and what you can do here is send out a link to your contacts when you go to start an activity, and what they can do is follow along your outdoor activity. And this can be both a fun thing where, let's say you're doing a race or something like that, you can send a Live Track link to some contacts who can follow along your progress, but it also can be beneficial from a safety standpoint if you want to let somebody know where you are during an outdoor activity. Now, one very important thing to note about these safety and tracking features, though, is that you will have to have your phone with you and in range for these features to work, because it's going to use your phone's cell connection to send out those alerts with your location. And then on the fitness and sports side of things, the Venu SQ2 can track tons of different types of activities, from running, both outside and inside, outdoor and indoor cycling, pool swimming, plenty of gym profiles like strength training, high intensity interval training, the elliptical, stair machines. There's also yoga and Pilates profiles, and there's even outdoor recreation profiles like tennis, skiing, snowboarding, paddleboarding, and golf. It does a lot. And then when it comes to how well the Venu SQ2 does in regards to tracking sports and activities, I've got some examples for you for running, cycling, as well as weight training. So for running, it did a great job here in this run where the total distance was very close to the other devices I was using as references. And then on this road ride, again, very good where the total distance and the rest of the data lined up well. Now, total distances are one thing, and the Venu SQ2 was always right in line with the other devices I was using as references, but what was really impressive for me was the finer detail of the GPS tracks. Now, this part gets a little bit geeky, but I really wanted to point it out. So here's that run that we just saw in Long Beach, and you can see that it's basically right in line with the other devices, and these devices have even more powerful GPS, but you can see that the Venu SQ2 did great. I want to point out this section right here as I'm winding my way through the downtown area. So what happens around really tall buildings like these is that you may not have a clear satellite signal, and satellite signals can kind of bounce off these objects, creating some not so great GPS tracks, but can also throw off your final distance. But the Venu SQ2 held its own and performed really well. There were a couple minor hiccups here and there where it veered off the actual path slightly, but nothing drastic or anything like that that would drastically throw off the final distance. So now let's talk about heart rate accuracy. So the Venu SQ2 comes with Garmin's latest and greatest Elevate heart rate sensor, which is an update to the original Venu SQ. And I found this sensor to be quite accurate with all the testing that I've done with other Garmin devices that use this sensor, like some of Garmin's higher end watches. So starting off with some indoor cycling, which I find to be kind of a baseline when it comes to heart rate accuracy, the Venu SQ2 did great here, even with some rapid changes in heart rate compared to some external heart rate monitors. There were just a few spots where the heart rate varied by maybe just 3 to 4 beats per minute, but overall this is a very good result. And then for running, again, quite good results. If I were to nitpick on this ramp up in heart rate right here, it took a few seconds to track the quick rise, but this is pretty typical for an optical heart rate sensor, and you can see that with the other one that's in purple. And then right here, it had a little blip in a couple places where it wandered ever so slightly at the end, but overall, this was great. And then with road biking outside, this starts to introduce a few more challenges for wrist-based optical heart rate sensors, like vibrations from the handlebars as well as bumps in the road, which can make the watch bounce around, which these types of sensors don't tend to like so much. But again, we see a solid result from the Venu SQ2. There's a few spots where it took a couple moments to catch up to the rise in heart rate and a couple wiggly spots at the tail end of the ride, but overall, this is pretty much exactly what I want to see. However, there are some activities that are simply very challenging for wrist-based optical heart rate sensors to track accurately, and the first one's going to be weight training, where you're going to be gripping onto the dumbbells, and there's also a lot of varying arm movement. And then the other is mountain biking, where you're gripping onto the handlebars as well, and there's also going to be a lot of rough terrain. And here's where you can see there's a bit more variance versus the other activities that we saw before, where it tracked this first set high, but then it did get back in line for the rest of those sets. Then on these bicep curls, again, tracked a little bit high, but then for the remainder of the workout, it did a good job, including the high intensity intervals at the end. And then for mountain biking, we can see that on the first half of the ride, things were solid out of the Venu SQ2, but on the second half is where we see it wander a bit here and there. But what I want to show you is that these are on these sections where I was going downhill over some rough terrain, and basically the rougher the terrain, the more the watch can bounce around, which can throw off the sensor. Now, although it did veer off from time to time, what's important is that it can recover from those errors and lock back onto heart rate, which it did. For comparison, here in blue, I'm showing another watch that I was wearing on my other wrist, and it had the same sort of trend where the first half of the ride was good, but the second half it experienced the same thing, but wasn't as good at recovering. Overall, though, the heart rate accuracy out of the Venu SQ2 is very reliable for stuff like running as well as road biking, and it did an okay job at stuff like weight training as well as mountain biking. But you will see more variance with those types of activities, but the same thing can be said for basically any type of watch out there. The good news is, though, is that the Venu SQ2 can pair with external heart rate monitors to get more reliable data for those types of activities. And in addition to being able to connect to external heart rate straps, you can also connect to other accessories like speed and cadence sensors for cycling and a bunch more. And by the way, if you're looking for a recommendation for a good budget-friendly external heart rate strap, I did a video on a bunch of different options that I'll have linked down in the description below. Now, the Venu SQ2 doesn't have an altimeter like the higher-end Venu 2, and this is really only going to come into play with a few different things. So it won't be able to track your floors climbed during the day, it doesn't have a floor climb activity profile, and you won't be able to see your total elevation gain during an activity, but that's about it. So the Venu SQ2 basically takes everything great from the original Venu SQ and adds a larger, crispier, and brighter AMOLED display, an updated heart rate sensor, as well as a new GPS chipset, which I found to be pretty impressive. And if you're curious about how the Venu SQ2 compares to the higher-end Venu 2 and Venu 2 Plus, don't worry, I got you covered and that video is in the works, so make sure to subscribe to get a notification when that video comes out. And if you have any questions about the Venu SQ2 that I didn't cover in this video, make sure to leave those in the comment section down below. And on your way down there, if you found the information in this video useful, don't be shy about hitting that like button. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.